You got it. All right. Meanwhile, there's shocking reports now that the Biden administration has ended the Trump administration's Farmers to Families food box program. Georgia Congressman Austin Scott sounding the alarm on Twitter. He wrote this: extremely disappointed to see Secretary Vilsack cancel the program started under President Trump and Secretary Perdue to help farmers and food insecure American families through the pandemic. This is a misstep by the administration, and I urge them to reverse course here. Congressman Scott also sits on the House Committee of Agriculture. He joins us live here. Congressman, good to see you. Thanks so much for coming on. If you could, before we get to your thoughts on why they would end this food box program, many viewers are wondering what that is. What is it?
Sure. So it's a farm-to-table program where the USDA was purchasing food directly from the farmers, and this is fresh fruit, fresh vegetables, milk, dairy products. And so it is the type of food that on a Friday afternoon, if your best friends were coming over and you were having a big dinner at the house and you went to the grocery store and you bought the best of the stuff that you could buy and fruits and vegetables and dairy, it's exactly what's in that box. And we've got a great mission in South Georgia, Second Harvest, that does a tremendous amount of box packing from the traditional box standpoint, that's canned and bagged and the things that you keep in your pantry. And so the primary difference is this is fresh food straight from the farm in these farm box programs, where your traditional food boxes are stuff that has been processed.
And that helps with, obviously, food banks like Second Harvest, correct?
Second Harvest played a big role in distribution of both of them, is my understanding. But the primary difference in what President Trump set up was we were purchasing fresh food from the farms and giving that food directly to the consumer. It was good for the farmer. The farmer only gets about 8% of what you spend at the grocery store, and so the farmer was actually getting more money. And it's good for the consumer because they're actually getting fresh fruit and vegetables that have not been processed. And so very, very efficient, very good program for the farmers, very good program for the people that are receiving the boxes.
Sure. Listening to it, it sounds like a win-win. Farmers are obviously going to get money, especially at a time when it's very difficult during this pandemic. And we've seen at the beginning of the pandemic where farmers had many issues. So why would administration end this program then? What would be the purpose in your thought?
There's only one reason for them to end it, and that is that Donald Trump and Sonny Perdue set up a successful program. And they, as you know, if Donald Trump set it up, and they're going to try to undo it. And so there are a lot of things that President Trump did that were good for most Americans, and this is one of them. And they're undoing it simply because it was Donald Trump and Sonny Perdue that set it up. But the food in those boxes is the highest quality food that you could buy anywhere that you went, whether you went to a farmer's market or a Publix or the highest end grocery store out there. It's the best you could buy.
Are there others raising the alarm on this? Obviously, I know you sit on the Agriculture Committee. Are there others that are concerned about this?
So we're very concerned with what we're seeing from Secretary Vilsack and President Biden with regard to agriculture. And you can go back and look at what they did in the COVID relief package, where they segmented out farmers. And if you're an Asian or an African American or Hispanic or a couple of other ethnicities, and whatever you owe the USDA, these people qualify as socially disadvantaged farmers. Whatever they owe the USDA on a farm note, they're going to pay off that note plus give them 20%. Now, women are also considered socially disadvantaged farmers without regard to race or ethnicity. And Secretary Vilsack admitted the other day that they cut white women out of Section 1005 of the COVID relief package. It was done intentionally. And then they just released the criteria on the payoff. And not only are they going to do this for U.S. citizens, but they're going to do it for foreign nationals. And in the criteria that they released this week, they've said they're not even going to check the immigration status. So if you qualify based on race or ethnicity, regardless of if you're a U.S. citizen, without regard to whether or not you're legally in the United States or not, they're going to pay off your farm note plus give you 20%. White women were eligible for these loans as well as socially disadvantaged farmers, and they cut them out of Section 1005. This is what we're seeing from Biden and Vilsack. And by the way, the same companies that are threatened to boycott Georgia signed off on this. Coca-Cola signed off on a letter. PepsiCo signed off on a letter. Nestle signed off on a letter supporting all of this stuff when they intentionally excluded women.
Okay, so let me get this straight here, and just unpacking this. You're saying that they can get a loan repayment, government money, essentially a government supplement, if you will, and you don't have to prove citizenship, and you don't have to prove immigration status. Is that correct?
And you don't have to prove discrimination. So Section 1005 of the COVID relief bill that they passed, you do not have to prove immigration. You do not have to be a U.S. citizen. You do not have to prove that if you are a foreign national, you don't have to prove that you're in the country legally. And whatever you owe the USDA on the farm note, they're going to give you 120% of it.
All right. Before you go, I got to ask you, since you are from Georgia there, and you kind of touched on it, but obviously there's a lot of pushback on the voting election laws there in Georgia, what was signed by Governor Brian Kemp. But all I wanted to get is a response from you on moving the All-Star game out of your state, Major League Baseball, your whole thought process on that, and even if you wanted to elaborate on sports getting involved in politics, because that seems to be a hot-button issue. Where do you stand with that, and then what that does to your constituents or other constituents there in your great state of Georgia?
You know, I'm sorry that that MLB has chosen to do that. They hurt a lot of Georgia citizens that needed the overtime, that needed the paycheck, and and they left the state of Georgia over what was just a false narrative on the election law. Ralph Warnock, our U.S. senator, has had to admit that he misrepresented the context of the law. Now, this is a U.S. senator who is out there telling things about the election law that he has now had to publicly admit he was not telling the truth. Now, those companies aren't calling him out for misrepresenting the facts on it. And the one thing I want to tell you, with regard to MLB, they'll go do business with China. And you had a pretty good segment just a minute ago about Chip Roy's legislation, and he's absolutely right about what he's saying. Over 80,000 Americans will die from drug overdoses this year. They kill those transnational criminal organizations kill a whole lot more Americans than Al Qaeda or ISIS ever has, and they need to be treated the way he wants to treat them, just like other terrorist organizations are. Admiral Fowler yesterday in the Armed Services Committee, in his testimony, I asked him specifically about the money laundering that was happening with the transnational criminal organizations. His response: Our interagency partners in the United States have pointed out to us, the FBI and others, that Chinese money laundering is the #1 underwriting source for transnational criminal organizations. So Major League Baseball, in corporate America, candidly, they bend over backwards to do business and support China. They bend over backwards to do business and support China. And who's doing the money laundering for the transnational criminal organizations that are creating the problems at the border, that are killing so many Americans with drug overdoses? If corporate America wants to do something for America, then they ought to stand up for the American citizens and say no to China.
Congressman, we'll leave it there. Point taken. That's Congressman, we appreciate Austin Scott joining us from Georgia. Good to see you. You have a great weekend. Thanks for your time.
You too. Thank you so much.